Okay, so chapter 3, lesson 2, we're adding rational numbers. And if you remember from the prior video, rational numbers are any number that you can find on a number line specifically, all right? Numbers that are not rational cannot be located on a number line specifically, don't have a specific location on a number line. So we're just going to be adding rational numbers with the same sign, all right? But this lesson is focused on decimals. We're going to be adding decimals using a number line, all right? So when we talk about adding 2.5 and 1.5, I know a lot of us are used to just taking 2.5 and then 1.5, lining up the decimal, and adding like this. 5 and 5 is 0, carry the 1 is 10, carry the 1, 2, 3, 4, bring down the decimal, and we're done, right? Well, here's the thing. On a number line, we can prove on a number line that if we start at 2.5, which is somewhere around here, in between 2 and 3, and we add 1, okay, 1, so that we're at 3.5, and then we add that half, that 0.5, we're going to find ourselves right here at 4. So adding 1.5 using a number line is just another way of showing the how to add two numbers, all right, two decimals. And that's all it is. All we're doing is we're just using a number line to add decimals, and it's not too hard. We just have to practice doing this because we are going to see it, because this is part of the standard 7.NS.1, adding and subtracting rational numbers. So here we're using fractions, and so I'm not really worried about the word problem right now, because the word problem is actually 7.NS.3. This one has to do with word problems, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing rational numbers, all right? So what I'm going to focus on is just the 7.NS.1, adding and subtracting rational numbers. Cool? So now, when we look at this example B, yeah, I can see it all. We're going to use fractions. So essentially, we're taking negative 3/4, because Kyle pours out 3/4 liter of liquid. All right, so we're starting with a negative, and then we're going to add another negative. All right, because he pours out another 1/2 liter of liquid. So he loses this much, and then he loses that much. So negative 3/4 on a number line. See, this is where knowing where 3/4 is on a number line. Notice how this number line has from 0 to 1. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 small sections. All right, so they broke it up into 4 total pieces. Okay, and we're going to start at the third section there. 1, 2, 3. So we're starting 3/4 of our way to negative 1. 3/4 is less than 1. Negative 3/4 is less than negative 1. Cool? So starting at negative 3/4, we're going to move 1/2 unit to the left, because the 1/2 we're moving is a negative. All right? So this is not 1/2. This, going from 3/4 to 1, or negative 3/4 to negative 1, that move is just 1 out of 4 moves of that whole, okay? So we need to move 1/2. And 1/2 is actually this much, right? 1/2 is actually half of this whole. So we're going to start from here, and we're going to go 2 of these fourths. Cool? So we start here, and we're going to go all the way to here. And this is negative 1 and 1/4. So the result is negative 1 and 1/4. Cool? So that's what we're trying to do here with negatives, decimals, and fractions. So essentially, all we're trying to do is use a number line to show how we add fractions and decimals. Sound good? All of this is practice for adding decimals and fractions. Then we have the additive inverse strategy, where the opposite of a number is the same distance from 0 on a number line as the original number. So the additive inverse is a fancy way of saying the opposite of a number. Cool? So if we are trying to find negative 3.5 plus 3.5, what they're going to try and get you to understand here is when you use a positive number to represent the gain in yards and a negative number to represent the loss in yards, what you're really talking about is starting from negative 3.5 right here, we're going to show the gain of 3.5, which gets us to 0, all right? So that the overall change is 0 yards. So the example here, a football team loses 3.5 yards on their first play. So we're starting at negative 3.5 because they lost that, all right? And then on the next play, they gain 3.5 yards. So obviously they're back at 0. So they didn't gain or lose after 2 plays. So that's kind of what they're trying to get you to understand is the recognizing that the opposite of negative 3.5 is 3.5, and you know it's just recognizing how that works. All right, so this property of opposites, the sum of a number and its opposite equals 0. Whatever number you're working with added to its negative is going to equal 0. So positive 3 plus negative 3 equals 0. So that's actually a property in math that you can refer to when you're dealing with numbers. Adding 3 or more rational numbers. This, again, we're just going to be looking at these 2 properties to help us take a problem like negative 5.25 plus 6.75 plus negative 3.25 plus 4.5. Okay? So what this commutative property helps us to understand is that we can take this negative 5.25 and this negative 3.25 and we can put the same problem in a different order so that these negatives are being added together and that these positives are being added together. And the associative property just means these are associated, they are similar, they are familiar, so we're going to do them first, and then we're going to do these second. So we end up with a negative and a positive instead of trying to do a negative and a positive plus a negative plus a positive and going back and forth on a number line. You know, that just being able to move the numbers around so that the signs don't get mixed up, that's what they're trying to explain here. All right, that's the purpose, is using the commutative property to move numbers around, numbers and their signs around, and then using the associative property to group them, solve these 2 first, these 2 second, so that you can have a much simpler problem to solve at the end of this process. So that's what's happening here. And then what do we have? Guided practice, independent practice with word problems, which is 7.NS.1d, and that's what that lesson is all about.